Friends, in just a few moments, we will begin the service for Mr. Marshal M. Stein. On behalf of the family, I want to thank all those who are joining here in the chapel, as well many of those who are joining us on the live stream. Just as a gentle reminder, if anybody happens to have a cell phone, please take a moment to turn it on silent. Officiating today's service today will be Rabbi Dror Schenken-Gold and Cantor Rachel Brook of Anshe Emet Synagogue. Thank you so much.
Adonai roi lo echzar binot deshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenahaleini nafshi yeshovev yancheini v'maglei tzedek yancheini v'maglei tzedek leman shemo gam ki elech begeit al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shiftecha umishantecha hemo yenachamuni ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai dishanta vashemen roshi kosi revaya ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti beveit Adonai leorech yamim. Adonai roi lo echzar Adonai roi lo echzar.
The cantor just chanted the words of the 23rd Psalm. The words are in English in the handout you received. Please join me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We come together today to remember Marshal Stein. A Jewish funeral is called a levaya. It means an accompaniment. We accompany Marshal. We accompany Marshal on his final journey. We walk with him in this journey, and we accompany this family on their journey of grief and memory. We walk together and not alone in these days of memory. And as we think about accompanying Marshal and accompanying his family, we most especially think of those who loved him hardest, the people who were closest in Marshal's circle, and extend our condolences to Marshal's wife, Judith, to his sons, Giel and Eric, daughters-in-law, Regina and Polina, and to his beautiful granddaughters, Naava and Brielle, Eliana and Orli. We'll hear words of memory about the gifts that Marshal gave to all those who remember him today. And we'll begin with Giel.
Rabbi Dror, Cantor, dear friends and family, Dad said this was going to be easy because he thought it was only going to be my brother and I. I think he'd be happy to be wrong. This is a lovely turnout. Thank you for coming. My father wore the attribute of old school, and he wore it well. His 53-year marriage to my mom, Judith, his service in the American and Israeli armies, and his work as a clinical psychologist all respectively epitomized his loyalty, his bravery, and his intelligence. My dad was a loving husband, father, and grandfather. He fought through a heart attack on Tuesday evening as he and my mom drove home. Once he safely parked the car in the driveway, he succumbed. A former athlete who excelled at every sport, from football to golf, Dad loved the Cubs and the Bears. He loved science fiction movies, especially Star Wars, and he loved his woodworking. A French master shipbuilder taught my dad the art of craftsmanship. And decades later, even in an old age, my dad's hands were still those of a carpenter, powerful, steady, and capable of great tenderness. Those hands be strong. Those hands raised my brother and me into men who became fathers. Those hands came to embrace 2 daughters-in-law and then 4 granddaughters, who quickly put him to work on dollhouses, cribs, and closets for their dresses. These are my favorite projects, Dad would say. My dad was born in Chicago to Molly and Jerome Stein. By age 10, he regularly rode the train to Wrigley Field to watch the games, oftentimes skipping out from school. He was watched over by the conductors, they had them at those days, who all kept an eye out for little Marsh because he got to know them. Little kids could safely take such adventures in those days. After he graduated from Von Steuben High School, Dad earned a bachelor's degree from Roosevelt University and a master's degree in psychology from Northeastern Illinois University. But the call of the road postponed his mental health career's commencement. After serving in the American Army, Dad traveled the world for several years. He worked just long enough in each stop along his way to earn money for the next leg of his trip. Dad drove a taxi, he shoveled coal on a steamship, he farmed in several locations, he drove big rig trucks, he taught English and dancing, yes, dancing, in foreign countries, and he fished on commercial boats among many other jobs that he did to get to his next destination. In 1962, while he was on a pub break from his workday on the Sea of Galilee, where the Syrian soldiers would sit on the Golan Heights and snipe at his boat, Dad noticed a female Israeli soldier light a cigarette. She never smoked, she was just trying to be cool. Dad's eye would never wander again. After a 2-year long-distance relationship that followed, Dad's return to Chicago, Mom joined him here. They had me in 1972 and my brother Eric in 1977. We moved back to Israel later that year to be close to Mom's family. My parents settled on a kibbutz farming community just a stone's throw from the border with Lebanon. Unfortunately, over the next 11 years, stones were not the only objects that crossed that border. Dad saw combat close to home and in Lebanon. When the bombs hit nearby as we ran to the shelter one night, Dad threw himself over us, ready to make the sacrifice that it would ensure our safety. He was like that. In 1987, Dad moved the family back to Chicago. Being away from him for a 9-month period as he set things up here before we left Israel was one of the hardest periods in my life. That's how much he meant to me. Returning from a commune that prohibited private property and compensation, Dad couldn't afford the studies needed to renew his psychology license. He spent the next 19 years working in a parking garage. It was a difficult stretch. Dad lived his intellectual life vicariously through his son's education. Increasingly long and enriching conversations about philosophy, science, sociology, law, and of course psychology sustained Dad's thirst for knowledge and deepened his bond with my brother and myself. In retirement, Dad formed warm friendships with an auto mechanic down the street, the neighbor 3 doors down, the old guys, as he called them, at Home Depot and Menards, and his physician, Herbert Lang, who eventually moved to Israel when retirement graced his later years. But no view of Dad's life would be complete without mentioning his friends, Jay Lazar, the late Fred Helbron, and Dad's best friend, Leon Rubin. Stories about the good times with Leon were commonly heard in our home. Even during periods of physical separation, and after Leon moved to a warmer weather state, very wisely, Dad spoke of his brotherhood with Leon. Dad's granddaughters, their ages range from 6 to 12. The profound sadness they have expressed since his passing commingled with their heartbreaking, youthful realizations of mortality and questions about whether Grandpa will be cold in the cemetery, attest to his impact on them. He had an exceptional way with children. In his classically trained psychotherapeutic manner, Dad often kneeled when he spoke to our girls. He effortlessly and frequently asked them turnkey questions that opened the doors to their worlds and sparked the most precious exchanges. Grandpa was a fountain of knowledge, reassurance, and understanding. He was also fun. He really was. He raced the girls around the house in my office chair, which I never allowed them to do. One of the girls ratted him out later. He read them stories in funny voices. He pretended not to know their names. He served overly generous portions of ice cream. And he watched Cinderella for the 27th time with undiminished enthusiasm as the girls narrated every single scene. I'm sure there's parents in this room who've experienced something like that. Dad is no longer with us physically, but those who want to glimpse his spirit need only look at how his sons father their children and at the enormity of his wife's loss. We will miss him every day as we strive to reflect his best qualities in our own lives.
Thank you, Giel, for that beautiful tribute. Eric.
Just imagine following that your whole life. I didn't write any speeches today. I wanted to speak from my heart. I don't have a lot of fancy words. All I have is the memories of my father and what he made of me. My father was a good man. He was an intelligent man, caring, loving, and an amazing father. He has prepared me for this day my entire life. He often spoke about death, reassuring me that it's part of life and it is only the beginning. He taught me, my brother, to be strong, to be smart, and above all, to be loyal to our families and to each other, and to take care of each other. As my brother told you, our lives in Israel were not easy. We all see the horrors of war today on our television. That was our reality for many years. My father protected us as he wore many hats throughout his life. When we lived in Israel, when I was young, he wore the hat of Superman. Anytime bombs fell or the bullets came, anytime he had to pick up his gun and protect us, Superman was there. I never was afraid. I never doubted of my safety or that me and my brother would come through. Because as my brother so eloquently recalled, my dad always jumped on top of me and him and protected us. My entire life I've been underneath my father as he protected me and shielded me for the world and got me ready for this moment to step forward and show my children the beauty of life and the beauty of death, and that we all continue in the hearts and minds of our families and our loved ones. As Giel said, my father would be honored that so many of you have come to show your love and support. His love for his grandchildren was inspiring. I wasn't blessed with having grandparents for for a very long time. I'm blessed that my father gave that gift to my kids. Brielle and Orli have good memories, and they will keep my father alive forever, because that's what he believed in. He will now be eternally with me, and as I move forward, I will teach my children, and they will teach theirs. And that's how we stay forever. Although this is a very sad day, it is also a beginning. My father has given me the final lesson, and that is how to die gracefully, with dignity, honor, and respect. True to himself in his final moments, as my brother recalled. He even stopped prolonged that in order to take care of my mother and to save her. His kindness, his intellect, and every life lesson that he taught me is what makes me the man I am today. It's what gives me the power to stand here. It's what gives me my love inside my heart. He taught me how to love unconditionally. He taught me to love my wife. He loved my wife dearly. He called her his princess. He loved my brother's wife dearly. He often spoke of how he admired her intellect, her accomplishments as a physician, her heart to take care of the sick, heal the wounded. He was so proud of her. He was so proud to call her his daughter-in-law. He was so proud of Polina as a strong businesswoman and as a mother. He shared with me some of his greatest joys was to see the evolution of my own wife as a mother and how loving she is to me. My father passed away, a happy man. He knows that I am taken care of by an amazing wife. He knows my brother is being taken care of by an amazing wife. And like him, we will walk through life with our partners. Honey, will you come up here for a second? This is my wife, Polina, as many of you know. She is my rock. And she also used to call my dad, Dad. I thank her for accepting him for who he was and for taking him into his heart. Her love for him inspired me, and it's what helped us through many of our hard times. I want to thank her for being here with me, for supporting me, and for being always by my side. I draw strength from you, and my father always taught me to do so. And like my father took care of my mother and stood by her side and taught me that is how I stand by my wife's side. And I will honor him by honoring my wife the same way. And hopefully someday my children will stand over my grave and say the same words, that I was a good man, that I was a strong man and kind and had a good heart. And that is all I ever wished for, and that is all my father ever wished for. Thank you all so much for coming here today again. It means absolutely the world to me to see so many friends. You guys are my family. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know many of you didn't know him, but thank you.
Beautifully said. There's no one who could stand here today and not see how Marshal was so loved. Marshal Stein died suddenly. The shock of his loss still reverberates in the hearts of those who knew him best and loved him most. Though Marshal lived for 83 years, no one expected him to leave this world. And because Marshal loved well and loved hard, he leaves behind an aching family. His wife Judith, his sons Giel and Eric, who we heard from this morning, his daughters-in-law Regina and Polina, and his granddaughters Naava, Brielle, Eliana, and Orli. Across the globe, and most especially in Israel, Marshal is missed and loved by so many. We know that this morning there are those joining us virtually from afar who are sending their love and holding the family close as well. And yet, it seems as if the calendar is speaking to us today, because there is such poetry in remembering Marshal on the eve of the Shabbat before Purim. Today on the Jewish calendar is the 8th of Adar. That means that the holiday of Purim is coming next week, beginning Wednesday night. And the story of Purim reflects so many of Marshal's most cherished values. The story of Purim is one of family and loyalty. Mordechai adopts his cousin Esther. When Esther is orphaned, he takes her in, he loves her, and he protects her. Family first. And when Esther becomes queen, Mordechai continues to guide her, protect her, watch over her, and fight for her, because that's what you do for your family. Marshal Stein believed in family. Marshal was an unparalleled husband. When Judith met Marshal, she recalls being drawn to how warm he was, how loving he was, and how knowledgeable he was. Judith recalls that Marshal was sensitive to all other human beings, obsessed with the human condition. Judith said, "He was my husband, my lover, and my teacher." When they moved from Israel to the United States, Judith didn't speak English or understand American culture. But Marshal was there, and he guided her, advised her, and protected her. Marshal was a protective father. Eric recalled that Marshal gave him and Giel courage. Eric relayed he protected us with his gun and with his body. And Marshal wanted his boys to be close to each other. The brotherly bond between Giel and Eric is a testament to Marshal's relentless focus on family. Giel recalls that the relationship between father and sons evolved and became more intellectual over time. Marshal loved his boys. Marshal was a giving father-in-law. Polina recalls how Marshal taught her to ride the train, went out to lunch with her, called her his princess. And Regina recalls how Marshal told stories and collected stories. He would listen deeply to the stories of those around him, including Regina's, and look right into you as if he could experience the story himself. What a rare gift. Marshal took his daughters-in-law in as his own. And Marshal was the world's best grandpa. Every one of his granddaughters will tell you as much. Naava recalls how Saba drove all 4 of the grandkids to Target, took endless selfies, and bought each girl whatever she wanted. Brielle recalls how Grandpa would call her his co-pilot and empower her to navigate with her natural sense of direction. Eliana remembers how Saba would always make jokes about Matilda and having alligator for dinner. And Orli said simply and perfectly, he was the best grandpa, and I loved him. Marshal Stein put family first. The story of Purim is also about courage and sacrifice. Esther risked her life to save the Jewish people. She stood powerless before a king bent on genocide, gave up her safety, and risked everything. In doing so, she saved us all. Marshal Stein exemplified courage and sacrifice. Marshal was a patriot who proudly fought to protect the United States of America. He loved reading the Constitution and was filled with pride for his country. Marshal was also a defender of Israel. He stood on the Lebanese border and risked his life to protect the Jewish people, the Jewish state, and his family. The word Yehudim, Jews, is first found in the book of Esther. Marshal was a proud Jew. He was loyal to his people, to our past, to our present, and to our future. From Shabbat dinners to an unwavering Zionism, Marshal stood by his tribe. And Marshal was courageous at home too. It takes great courage to become a man who carves painstakingly, as if from a block of wood, a future which is not burdened by the past. Few people achieve such a feat. Marshal did. And Marshal sacrificed. He sacrificed whatever was necessary. When returning to the United States, as we heard, Marshal worked in an industry that did not bring him joy, but it did put food on his family's table. Marshal was courageous indeed. The story of Purim is also about humor and levity. Purim is celebrated with costumes and songs and cookies and games and laughter and frivolity. And the truth is, though Marshal was a very serious man, there was also a dichotomy to him. He had an incredible sense of humor. I have rarely talked to a family in preparing for a funeral that laughed so much. With each story and each joke and each anecdote about this man and how he brought a smile to people's faces. He's remembered for being funny and silly, especially with his granddaughters. Orli says that Grandpa made her laugh. Brielle remembers the pure joy of learning woodwork from Saba. Naava remembered Grandpa's magic shop, where he would hide a garage opener from prying eyes so that he could miraculously snap his fingers and cause the door to move. Eliana remembers how Grandpa would watch Cinderella for years of Saturday nights and let the kids scoot around in that office chair Giel talked about, not because it was allowed, it wasn't, but because it was fun and maybe a little naughty. Like Mordecai, Marshal Stein put family first. Like Esther, Marshal Stein was courageous beyond compare. Like Purim itself, Marshal Stein brought smiles and laughter to the faces of those he loved best. Marshal Stein was loving and loved. Marshal Stein left the world better than he found it. Marshal Stein will be sorely missed and always remembered. Zichrono livracha. His memory is a blessing. Please rise. We'll say the El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer.
El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת Marshal Stein שלח לעולמו בגן עדן תהי מנוחתו. אנא בעל הרחמים אז תראהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו ינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן.
God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the wings of thy sheltering presence, among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament. Unto the soul of Marshal M. Stein, who has gone unto eternity. Lord of mercy, bring him under the cover of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of life, be God's possession, and may his repose be peace. And we can all say, Amen.
Mrs. Stein, Giel and Eric and family. On behalf of the President of the United States and the United Armed Forces and a grateful nation, please accept this token of your husband, of your father, of your grandfather's faithful service to his country. Friends, this does conclude our service here at the chapel. Interment will follow at the family's plot at Shalom Memorial Park in Arlington Heights. The family will be sitting Shiva at the Stein residence, 18 Melrose Lane in Lincolnshire. Those times and information are posted on the service folder you received on the way in. If you did not receive one on the way in, they're available on the way out. And for those of you who are watching this online, once again, on behalf of the family, thank you for joining online. The information is also on the website. Memorial contributions in Mr. Stein's memory can be made to AMVETS, American Veterans. That information is available on the service folder and online as well. A procession to the cemetery will be forming in our parking lot. Please make sure you obtain an orange funeral safety sticker to be placed on the windshield, the right side of your windshield in your car. For an additional measure of safety, we will give you a magnetic flag to place on the driver's side roof of your vehicle. Please make sure your bright lights and hazard lights are on at all times, and try to drive as safety as closely permits to the car in front of you, especially as we drive through processions, as we want to avoid any large gaps. Serving as pallbearers today, when I call your name, if you could please stand next to Marshall's casket. Sam Toma, Gino Petrosky, Gil Stein, Eric Stein, Nick Albuquerque, and Polina Stein. I could ask everybody to please rise at this moment as we escort Mr. Stein, the pallbearers, the clergy, and the family from the chapel. Thank you so much.
Amar Adonai